There you go, Scano, Honey. It's Aaron Bell from White Pine Dancers back with you again. This is the third segment of a six-segment educational series, storytelling, teachings, that sort of thing about First Nations culture. All right. What we're going to talk about today is creation stories. So creation stories are part of every culture across the world. One of the three things that most creation stories have in common is they always have animals, they always have water, and they always have a woman. Right? So those are three things that most of the cultures across the world have in common. Now, I'm a contemporary storyteller. A contemporary storyteller, we're allowed to kind of wrap our words around the teachings. A traditional storyteller is one who knows the stories from the past through oral histories. And it is their responsibility to remember those stories word for word for word. And they're only told at certain times throughout the year during ceremonial times. So I am not a traditional storyteller. I'm a contemporary storyteller. So the stories that I like to share are ones that I was taught to learn the teachings first, and then wrap your words around those teachings, and that helps you create the story in your own way. One of the stories that I share is one that's been around for 22,000 years. So Canada is very young. They just had, their 151st last year? 100 what?
153.
153, well now.
This year.
This year it's 153. So a lot of people think that, Canada's very, very old. And we're just sitting there going, no. First Nations people have been here for 22,000 years. That's why they call us First Nations, because we were here first. I don't really like the word Aboriginal because we are the original peoples, not the Aboriginal. But it depends on people's different perspective. Other people are allowed to have their own opinion whatsoever. Right? I don't like the word Indians because we're not from India. And that whole thing came from Christopher Columbus, because he was looking for India when he sailed across the Great Waters. And he landed in an island that he named his salvation, because his crew were going to throw him overboard. But he said, just give me a few more days, and if we don't find land, then I'll throw myself overboard, and you can turn around. So the crew thought that, okay, well, that's fair. And then on the third day, they saw birds, which means land was close, and they found an island. He claimed this island for the King of Spain, which is weird, because Christopher Columbus was Italian. But anyway, that doesn't matter. He landed on the island, and he named this island on behalf of the Queen, Isabella, I think her name was. He named this island on behalf of the Queen of Spain, San Salvador. And you can still see this island on the map to this day. So Christopher Columbus never once set foot in North America. Right? So he's not the first European to set foot in North America. As we all know now, it was Leif Erikson or Eric the Red? One of the Vikings, anyway. One of the Vikings landed in Newfoundland, and this was hundreds of years before Christopher Columbus. But I lost my train of thought. Went off to creation stories. So we're talking about storytelling and contemporary and traditional. So one of the stories I share is the Mohawk creation story. Now, the real creation story can take about 3 to 4 days to share in the traditional language. The way I share it, though, is I've chosen to share it between the transition of Sky World to the back of the Great Turtle, and how Sky Woman falls from the back of the Great Turtle. So that's what I'm going to share. Right? When I share this story, I use a lot of hand motions. So all the little ones at home, if you want to follow along with my hand motions, they get you involved in the story a little bit more. So the first hand motion we're going to learn is this. We put our hands together just like this. This represents Sky World. Sky World is far, far up above the clouds that we see in the air today. Every time I say Sky World, hold your hands up, just like this. This is Sky World. In our story, there's going to be geese and loons flying through the air. Geese and loons flying through the air. Higher and higher and higher do these geese and loons fly. In our story, there's going to be beavers swimming. Beavers swimming. There's going to be muskrats hopping. Muskrats hopping. In our story, there's going to be turtles rising from the waters. Turtles rising from the waters. In our story, there's going to be trees being uprooted. Trees being uprooted. So we put our hands together, open it up like a book. Trees being uprooted. In our story, there's going to be a heroine. Now I go into schools, I ask the children, what is a heroine? Some of them don't know what a heroine is. So this is a comparison. I say, well, Spider-Man is a hero. He's a man. there was a spider woman, she would be a heroine. So in our story, there is a heroine. Her name is Sky Woman. Sky Woman is very bountiful with child. She has the gift of life within her. Now, boys, you got to do this too, right? Because boys, you have to recognize the importance of what having the gift of life within you is. And because we can't do it, we always have to have respect for our life bearers, which is women. So Sky Woman has the gift of life within her. So those are the basic hand motions of our story. I do a lot of other hand motions. You guys can try and keep up, but I'm not sure you'll be able to. Okay, so this story, in order for this story to work, we're going to have to use our gift of imagination. We're going to have to pretend that we are right here in the city of Burlington, where the Joseph Brown Museum is, where Joseph Brown used to cross through to get to his second home, just outside of Kingston. Right? It's 1,000 years ago. Right? So the Joseph Brown Museum is not there. All the parks, all the homes, all the schools are not there. But this is where you live. This is where you live with your people. In about 10 longhouses. A longhouse is basically a long house. Has about 10 to 15 fire pits on the inside. Each one of these fire pits would have been like your kitchen table at home. Except around your kitchen table, around your fire pit, you lived with your entire family. Nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, mom, dad, grandfather, and grandmother. So, peace, friendship, respect. Very important within the longhouse. Longhouse was the very first apartment building in these lands. So when you look out your doors and in Toronto, you see apartment buildings. They're tall and straight. Right? A longhouse is an apartment building on its side. It's long and straight. 250 people could live underneath the roof of a longhouse. The longest recorded longhouse was about 2.5 football fields long. In a city that had almost 50,000 people inside of it. This is before Columbus arrived over here. Right? So, longhouse. Right? Your smoke comes from your fire, but your fire has hardly any smoke because your people, from 1 year ago, cut down firewood. Then they put it someplace dry for 1 entire year. The drier the wood, the less smoke. The wetter the wood, the more smoke. So a lot of the archaeologists and anthropologists, those are people who study the past and study the cultures of the past, those ones always says that our people had very bad eyesight because we lived in homes filled with smoke. I'm only wearing my glasses because when I was a child I read a lot, so that kind of hurt my eyes. So that's why I wear glasses. Not because I live in a home filled with smoke. So, would you live in a house filled with smoke? No. Neither did we. We had 250 people living underneath the roof of one longhouse. 14 to 15 fires going 24 hours out of the day. So all that heat would push the smoke up and out of the smoke holes. You could tell how many families lived in one longhouse by the number of smoke holes in the roof of the longhouse. Your village is surrounded by a palisade, which consists of up to 2,000 cedar poles, buried 4 feet into the ground, standing 20 feet high. This palisade protects your people from our elder brother animals. This wall protects your people from the cold winter winds. This wall protects your people from its enemies. Your longhouse and your palisades are made out of cedar. Cedar grows tall and straight. Cedar is one of the 4 medicines that our people use to give our words to the Creator. You call God God, we call God the Creator. Right? Cedar is also a plant that mosquitoes do not like the smell of. So we always built our homes out of mosquito-proof materials. So the next time you go camping, instead of getting those black citronella torches and putting them around your campsite, just go find a cedar bough and put it in the fire. And then wave out the flames and wave the cedar bough around your tent so your tent smells like cedar. And that keeps the mosquitoes away. Don't put it in your tent because then your tent will get on fire. Don't do that. All right, just go around the tent and make sure the smoke goes all over the tent. And then put the cedar into your fire every once in a while, and that smoke will keep the mosquitoes away. Right? But you are a young child. You have the gift of imagination. This is why you ask all kinds of questions. Questions like, why is the grass green? Why is the sky blue? Did bear always have that fuzzy little tail? One of the first questions our children always ask is, how did we get here? Where did we come from? So a storyteller comes to your fire, and he or she sits down and says, do you want to hear a story? To which all the children would say, yes. Long ago, we did not always live upon the back of a great turtle. Long ago we lived in a place far, far above the clouds, in a place called Sky World. Far, far up above the clouds that we see in the air to this day. This is Sky World. Whenever I say the word Sky World, hands up above your heads just like this. Within Sky World, far, far up above, there was a great village. And in this village there was a great chief who was very loved and respected by his people. He had a very beautiful wife whose name was Sky Woman. Sky Woman was very bountiful with child. She had the gift of life within her. Within Sky World, within this village, there was a great white pine tree. And upon the branches of this tree grew all the seeds that our people would need in order to be healthy. There was corn, beans, and squash, strawberries, blueberries, and mulberries, and all the foods that our people would need in order to be healthy. All came from this one tree of life that existed in this place far, far above the clouds, in a place called Sky World. That's pretty easy, right? That's what we're going to be doing throughout the whole entire story. Okay? So, within Sky World, far, far up above, one night, Sky Woman had a dream. And in this dream, the Creator came to her and told her that in order for her people to move on to their second phase of existence, they must uproot this tree of life that was in the center of their village. They must uproot this tree of life that was in the center of their village. When Sky Woman awoke the next morning, she shared this dream with her husband. Since her husband respected her so much, he agreed to do as the Creator had asked. He gathered 9 of his strongest warriors, and together they created a thing called a cordage rope. Now our people still believe to this very day that everything that is outside these 4 walls has a living spirit. Each blade of grass, each drop of rain, each tree, each animal has a living spirit. So, when we knocked down those cedar poles to create our palisades, we knocked down those cedar poles to create our long houses, we did not just throw away the bark. We peeled the bark off the trees, then we rolled them between our hands, and then we put them in the waters for 4 days and 4 nights. On the 5th day, we took that bark out of the water, and we braided it. And that's how we created our ropes long, long ago. Chief, 9 of his strongest warriors, threw this cordage rope to the top of the tree of life, where they yanked, and they pulled, and they yanked, until this tree of life slowly became uprooted. Once this tree of life had become uprooted, there was a great hole within the Sky World. All the people within Sky World, far, far up above, gathered around this great hole to see what the Creator had in store for them. Nothing was happening. Sky Woman came to this hole and she looked down. She could see the waters reflecting far, far down below. So, if you're in a canoe, at this time the earth was covered in nothing but vast amounts of water. No land for as far as the eye could see. So if you're in a canoe far, far down below looking up into the sky, you would see a hole in the sky with light shining through. And that's the hole that was created when the tree of life was uprooted. Sky Woman came to this hole and she looked down. She could see the waters reflecting far, far down below. And she wanted to get a closer look. But every time she leaned over, those bright and shiny things moved further and further away from her. She leaned over even more, but still those bright and shiny things moved further and further away from her. Sky Woman grabbed onto the roots in the tree of life that were right beside her. And she leaned right over that hole to see those bright and shiny things, but still further and further away from her. She had leaned so far out that the root she was holding onto snapped, and down into the hole Sky Woman fell. Now as Sky Woman is falling from this hole in the sky, there's a flock of geese flying along the surface of the oceans. Now, I'm sure you guys have all seen geese fly in the day sky before, right? They fly in that V formation, right? The chief and leader of that flock of geese is not the one who's at the point of the V formation. He's the one goose is at the back of the V formation. Because it's his job as leader, as chief, to watch over all those he is responsible for. Right? A perfect example is when our children are in school. Our young ones are told to line up at the door. Usually there's 1, 2, 3, or 8 of them who'd rush to be first. But if you're first in line, the first thing you see when you look ahead is the door. But if you're at the back of the line, the first thing you see when you look ahead is everybody else. So the responsibility of a chief or a leader is to always be at the very back of the line or at the flock of geese, to keep an eye on all those he is responsible for. Chief of the Geese looked up, saw Sky Woman falling, noticed Sky Woman did not have any feathers, and that if she continued to fall, her and her unborn child may die. Chief of the Geese could not let this happen. He thought and he thought, how could he help Sky Woman? And then he remembered that his people have very strong wings. So the Chief of the Geese led his people up into the air. Higher and higher and higher did the geese fly, until Sky Woman landed upon the backs of their great wings. And the geese floated Sky Woman down to the surface of the oceans far, far down below. But once there, Chief of the Geese again realized Sky Woman did not have any webbed hands or webbed feet. And if they placed her in the oceans, she may sink like a stone. Chief of the Geese thought and he thought. He realized that Sky Woman needed somewhere to place her feet. So, Chief of the Geese thought and thought to himself, and then he realized the great turtle has a vast shell. So, the Chief of the Geese called upon the great turtle to rise up out of the waters, and Sky Woman was placed upon his great back. She looked up at that hole in the sky world, and that hole in the sky world closed up, and that's when she knew that her and her people would begin a new life upon this new place. She still had the roots from the tree of life clasped in her hands, and she knew that if she could replant these roots, she would have enough food to survive. Chief of the Geese realized Sky Woman needed earth to plant these roots. Sky Woman turned to the great turtle and she asked him, Great Turtle, do you know of any place where I can find some earth? And Great Turtle replied in his deep, gravelly turtle voice, I have heard rumors that there is earth upon the waters upon which we live. I will call upon 3 of my strongest friends to come down and help you. If you want to find out who the next 3 strongest friends are, you'll have to join us for the next session. That's what's known as a cliffhanger. We'll see you again soon. Oh no.